autism and related challenges. For us, during the month of April, it's a heavy period where we're asked to go into the community to explain and to highlight this neurodiversity and to encourage persons to embrace it. And we're very fortunate. We've been around for a while now, since 1999, and we've gone into different schools, different churches, Rotary, a lot of different places would ask our organization to explain it. And with those requests, it's an opportunity to share and learn. And so for us, this is another chance for us to talk about autism. And I'm going to break my presentation. I'm not going to be terribly long. I like to field questions. But I'm going to break my presentation up into 3 distinct categories. And the first is my journey as a father. So, I'm a father of 3 children. My oldest daughter is 28 now, and the second one is 24, and then I have a son who's 22. And I remember walking into Dr. Minnis's office. He's very well known these days. We talk about it quite a bit. And he told my wife and I that we would be having a 3rd child, and that was not something that we were anticipating. Because, and I really had a chance to talk about this, it took a while for us to have our 2nd child. And so, we needed some assistance, so we dismissed the possibility of having another child. And here it is, he's telling us we're having a 3rd child. In January of 2003, our son was born some 16 months after our 2nd daughter. It was a typical birth. I was present. My son looked and developed physically like the 2 before him. My 2nd daughter used to cry all day and night, and I would have to hold her for extended periods of time to keep her settled. Our son was quiet and really gave us a little trouble. And I remember because we would go out and my 2nd daughter would have to hold a blanket the whole time, and she couldn't go anywhere. I'm sure you all know about that, seeing children who are just very clingy. And then I had my son, and he was just kind of there and looking normal. So she went to preschool, and then we waited for an opportunity for him to go to preschool. We sent him to school, and the school, after a short period, told us they believed he was not ready, and he was challenged being in that environment. I don't know that I was never more broken to feel the rejection of my son. I felt helpless. It was devastating, but I was unsure what was going on, because you have to bear in mind, I had 2 other children. They were fine. Here it is, someone third party telling me my child isn't good enough. I recall right before the age of 2, we had a party at the house, and my son was just away from everyone. He wasn't interacting much, and his attention was centered, and I'll never forget it, it was centered around a tree that was at the back of the property, and he was touching the leaves. I called him, and he never responded. I pulled him away, and he went back. And all the other children were playing, but he was operating as if he didn't see them. It was later that I began suspecting something might be wrong. Of course, Google did not help, because every fear I had, everything you put into Google, it started to point me in a direction that I could not imagine as a parent. I began saying, how could this be? What did I do? Is there a cure? How do I get him on the right path? That was the beginning of a journey that changed the lives of my entire household. Dalen, that's the name of my son, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. We took our son to the Dan Marino Center, which is in Miami. Most people, Dolphin fans, know who Dan Marino is. Where a battery of tests were ran, and at the end of it, we got this huge, big binder and a large bill. And that completed our visit to the center. He was confirmed being on the spectrum. What we were unsure of was that our son what we did not know was that our son would be in need of intensive lifelong support. From that day to this, we have been on a journey with speech therapists, vocational training, ABA therapists, and having a nonverbal son presents some very unique obstacles. Healthcare requires more professional and fuller hospitalization. I'll share a couple of stories. So, of course, my son does not speak at all, and so you can imagine if he's not well, the level of diagnosing that must take place, and then the investigation that is needed. And so, a few years ago, we noticed that he was pulling in his mouth, on his teeth, his gum area. We couldn't figure out why he was doing that. And typically, if you have a problem with your mouth, you just go into the dentist, they ask you to open your mouth, and they will examine you. But with someone who's nonverbal, they're not going to sit there because they're not sure what's going on. So each time for that particular exercise, we had to go and sedate him, which meant taking him to either a doctor's hospital or a health center where you have to go under general anesthesia, and that's a process. And you have to put him completely down and open up his mouth. So we've had to do that on more than one occasion, just to do a simple examination. And so the healthcare side is a reminder of the level and the deepness of support that is constantly needed for children on the spectrum. The other challenge is freedom of movement is not terribly comfortable, meaning, no, as parents, you don't want to leave your child. And so in our home where, my wife, we have to travel, or I have to travel, we both have to travel, that requires a lot of gymnastics in terms of, well, who's going to be here if both of us travel. And so, even now, even though he's 22, my wife she never wants to leave him. I mean, we had to, I think about 2 weeks ago, we had to travel, and she knew this was coming up, and she literally was sick because she didn't want to go. Because she knew her daughter wasn't going to be there, and we were going to have to leave him in the care for about 3 days with persons who were familiar with him, but not family. And so, stuff like that is what you have to deal with. Now, some of the joys of it, there are a lot of joys with having a child on the spectrum. I'm going to go through what autism is, but for now I'm going to speak about the father side. He can do almost anything that we ask. He follows instructions. He's able to communicate through the iPad. And I'll speak about that a little later, but a few months ago we went to Orlando, and we hadn't taken him in a while because sometimes traveling going through that process was a little bit traumatizing, and we just left it alone for about 18 months. So we took him away. He had a really, really good time. It was really just for him. And the night before we were leaving, we were packing the bags, and we noticed that he took the suitcases and he kept putting them away. He kept putting them away, and we were like, okay, he doesn't want to go back home. I said, Dalen, you gotta go down. He was standing in the corner, not really participating in eye contact. So the following day, we went to the airport. We were taking Bahamas Air. Now that exercise of traveling requires me making sure his bladder's empty. Right? I used to be able to send him with his mom, but she's like, "Okay, man, he's too big. You gotta take him." And most guys know how the public bathrooms are. You ain't really trying to. You gotta really plan which one you're gonna go to. And so we're in the airport, and we used the restroom before we went. Got to the airport, we checked in. He used it right before we went on the airplane, and I figured we good. Get on the plane. He's sitting down in his seat, and he starts to press, "I want bathroom." I'm like, there's no way. You can't be in the bathroom now. You're on the plane. They close the door. I can't take you to the bathroom in here. My man gets up, my wife was like, "You gotta take him to the bathroom." I'm looking at him like, "You serious?" So I take him to the back of the aircraft. he doesn't use the bathroom. Next thing I know, he's running to the front of the aircraft. He goes to the door. He wants to come off the plane. And so his whole thing, the first thing I want bathroom is to say, I don't want to go home. And so, even though it was a traumatic experience for us, it was a demonstration that he understood his circumstances, what he wanted. So there are a lot of highs and lows with raising a child, special needs in particular with this neurological disorder. So I want to just explain a little bit what autism actually is, because I even though we've been talking about it for a while, I always come across people that don't have a clue as to what it is. So forums like this are important because we want everybody to be sensitized and to understand. And I'll be honest, I think in the Bahamas we've done a fairly reasonable job of being empathetic from Reach's standpoint, what we see. So I'm kind of pleased with where we are as a community. But autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder that impacts how a child learns to communicate and interact with the world. It refers to a broad range of conditions characterized with lack of social skills, repetitive behavior, and a lack of social communication, not being able to communicate and interact socially. It looks different in everyone. So you're never going to meet a child with the exact same characteristics. My son goes to school, and I would say his best friend is completely opposite to him, but they travel in the same circles. My son is very sedentary, meaning he comes here, he's gonna sit there, he's not gonna move, he's gonna follow instructions. A lot of children on the spectrum move a lot, they flap a lot, they say loud noises, they jump up and down, and so every time I see the two of them in the car, they're like they look completely different, but they understand each other. And so if you've seen one child on the spectrum, you've only seen one child on the spectrum. Some autistic people can speak, while others are non-verbal or minimally verbal and communicate in other ways. Some require significant support in their daily lives, while others need less support and in some cases live entirely independently. I had the opportunity on last week to go to my niece's graduation ceremony at Howard. She did very, very well in dentistry. But what was interesting, my brother sent me a picture of Tony Braxton's son, who graduated at Howard as well last week, and he's on the spectrum. And so it demonstrates the skill set that exists. Doesn't mean our children can't go off, it just means that they have to be, the protocols and the support has to be there. And so that was really, really, really something to see. My son communicates through an app on his iPad. The app is called Protocol. It is an app designed for individuals who have difficulty communicating through natural speech. So he's able to convey his thoughts and wants and desires by using this app. And it's been a game changer in our lives. So to make that very useful for us and less frustrating for him, we put a lot of various options on the app. So it'll say, I want nuggets, I feel pain, I want to go to the bathroom that I talked about, I want conch. So it's funny, he loves conch. In recent times, Abu Shaki had no conch.
That's right.
So he'd be asking today, I want conch. And I'm like, where are we going to get that conch from? And so we've been suffering with that, getting him chicken, and he eats it, but that's not really what we want. So the other day we were able to go, there's a place in Nassau Village, I can't remember the name, very popular. And everybody loves that conch. So we went up there, he got it, he killed it, and we were able to satisfy that craving for I want conch. Social communication and interaction skills, making eye contact, that's usually something that's very complicated for our children. So looking them straight in the eye, or them looking at you, they usually are sometimes unable to do that. Understanding other people's body language and facial expressions, that's a challenge. Making friends and playing with peers, they're challenged with that. Understanding boundaries and personal space, sometimes that's a challenge. Feeling overwhelmed in social situations. Again, expressing feelings and seeking emotional comfort from others. All of those are signs and symptoms that show that the child may be on the spectrum. You also have restrictive and repetitive behaviors. So my son will wear the same pajamas every night. We have different colors and versions, but he'll get the same rip up. I buy him some new ones. We'll get the one, the chocolate. And then he doesn't wear sneakers. So the only thing he wants to wear are these black Crocs. So we got different versions of these old broken down Crocs. I buy him these nice Nike shoes. He ain't really want to wear that. So you take him to church, and he likes to wear shirts like this, not the long shirts. He don't want to wear no sweater. He definitely won't wear a suit. So it's constantly, I would take the clothes out, he would put it down, and now we'll get the same thing he wore last week. And what are you supposed to do? And I really wanted them the same, but
hide it.
It's either me or him, right?
Hide it.
So we try, and I've come a long way because I used to be bothered and stuff like that, and now I'm like, you know what, you don't wear it, not a big deal, let's keep it moving. Restrictive and repetitive behavior, stemming and making repetitive body movements. Stemming, rocking, hand flapping, running back and forth. The stemming is what he used to do a lot of, which is just playing with an object, not in the manner that it's used to. So, like I said, the tree picking, like he would go outside, even now, you notice he started to do this again, he would go outside and go to the leaves and just pull the leaves and put them down and just walk around and make a circle with the leaves. That's not what leaves are intended to be about, but that's what he does. He's also now running, if you leave the door open, he opens it up and he goes outside, and that's another thing, so you have to watch that. So there are a lot of behaviors that they go through. They start and then they stop. And so you sort of have to be very patient and just try and redirect their conduct. Lining up toys in a row, spinning wheels, repeatedly flapping, all of those are signs that the child may be on the spectrum. Imitating another person's speech, repeating words and phrases. For those who do actually speak, they just continuously repeat the same words that they hear from someone else. And so you have an incredibly wide spectrum, and if you've been following the news recently, I mean, even since the Trump election, he's been talking about autism, and he's concerned, and his Kennedy's worried about the rise in autism. You know, it makes it very, very scary, and I want to just alleviate a little bit of the concerns, because some of the things that they're talking about not quite accurate. So, in 2000, I believe, I think the rate of autism would have been maybe 1 in 156, roughly. In 2020, it went to 1 in about 36, which is huge. 1 in 36. My son was born in 2003. And in 2022, the numbers are now 1 in 33, with a 3 times propensity to be seen in boys. So if you go to my son's class at Hopedale, a lot of the young adults who are in there are boys. And so I can't explain to you why that exists, but I can explain why those numbers are showing what they are. It's a couple of reasons. The first is we've improved the ability to diagnose. And so you have better testing, better education, and that's allowing for the information to come out faster and persons to be able to say, well, this is what your child actually has. Secondly, there's been an expansion of what autism spectrum disorder looks like. So what does that mean? That means that other categories of deficits have now been included in this neurological disorder. So that means that if you just have an example before, the hand clapping wasn't included as a characteristic, they're now saying it is, so that would put the child on the spectrum. So the expansion has allowed for that. And the third reason would be just general knowledge. Persons are now coming forward. So you just have a greater testing system overall, and that's allowed for the detection rate to be higher. And so I'm not sure there is this prolific number of children on the spectrum. There's just a better way to identify them. And so that's what we're saying. A lot of times when we go out, persons ask, what do the numbers look like in the Bahamas? We haven't reached a point where we have stats on how many children are actually being diagnosed here. We've tried ourselves to send out flyers for persons to participate, but humans don't really like to Google forms and just give information. They just seemingly don't want to participate in that. And so what we generally say is whatever those numbers look like in the US is what we probably are looking like here. And so 1 in 33 is quite remarkable. Just go back a little bit. On the routine issue, a change in a child's routine can throw them off. So my wife, we have an untraditional household because we have some help, of course. My son has a full-time aide, very expensive. He goes to school as a cost. He has speech therapy, and we've been doing speech therapy for 20 years. So imagine what that looks like. And so Saturdays and Sundays are the times when, usually you have a time to rest. But with our son, every single Saturday morning, he wakes up, he comes in the room, he grabs his mother, he gets her tracksuit, the same tracksuit she wore last week, and he gives it to her, and that's him telling her, I'm ready to go to Wendy's to get my number 2. I know what you into with this sleeping bag. We going up. And so she's got to get out of bed, take him, put on the same thing, go in the same car, even the same car. He don't want to go. We have 2 cars, and she has to go in the other car because he don't want to go in her car. And he got to sit on the right-hand side of that car. It's the most craziest thing. Right, to watch this happen. And so she's got to go around, and she goes to Wendy's, she goes to Burger King. He eat pizza, both of them, and then they get back home. Same thing happens on Sunday. Sunday, same tracksuit, same thing. A couple of weeks ago, she was driving with him in the morning. I don't know what happened, but he decided to take his iPad and throw it out the window. Wow. So she came home. She's like, Dwayne, he threw the iPad out the window. Now, we went through a cycle maybe 10 years ago when he would take the iPads and throw them out. So we probably lost maybe like 10 over his entire 22 years. But I was very impressed when she got home and she was telling me about it. She had a backup, one in the drawer. I said, you had a backup iPad? Yeah, it was new sitting there. Yeah, I had a backup on it. I could try to call the speech therapist so we could program it because we have to put all his programs on it quickly. She was able to get all that organized in about 2 hours. I was really impressed. In fact, I told the story in church. I said, I think it was it mother? I don't know, we were celebrating something, but I said, I gotta highlight my wife. And I said, for a backup iPad in that circumstance, you know how women are, they run the home. So he knows she hasn't covered. But that was really, really impressive. But I only wanted to talk about the Saturday and Sunday routine, and that's just every single weekend. So the sameness is what we have to watch out for. So who can diagnose a child with ASD? It's usually a clinical psychologist or a pediatric neurologist. Let me just break that down. So in the Bahamas, we have a couple of persons who can do this, and we always try and recommend when we speak to contact our office and we'll direct you. But usually a clinical psychologist would be, and I'm not advertising them, CORS Institute, in the event you do need to have some type of evaluation. And then there's also Dr. Deshawn Saunders, who actually sits on our board, and you can get her details from our Reach office. She has an office in the Kalina building, near Kalina where Sarah restaurant is. She does a lot of diagnosing. So those would be the two premier places I would recommend if you're looking for a diagnosis. The proven management options for persons with ASD include speech and language therapy, which deals with promoting language and extracting it from the child. The second would be occupational therapy, and that helps with motor skills for the child, because you focus so much on the child talking, but you have to remember that they also have to walk and they have to squeeze their hand, and that's something that we had to bring on board with our son. Getting him to move. If you meet him, he's about almost 6 feet. He's very lean and athletic, but he's not athletic because he's not physically doing the things that others are doing typically with his age. So you may need occupational therapy. And now the number one form of therapy that is used is something called applied behavior analysis, and that's where you're redirecting behaviors in a positive way. And so we've sort of moved away a little bit from speech therapy, because you can be going on with speech therapy and not see language, but that behavior is something that you have to operate with all the time. So a lot of children can't sleep, they are loud, they're moving a lot, and the parents are broken because they can't get a break. And there are ways to address that. And so applied behavior analysis is what you're seeing more and more often in Europe and even in North America. So the causes of autism are complex and are not probably fully understood. Research has identified several factors that may contribute to its development. One may be genetic, the other is neurological, and in recent times people have been talking about environmental factors. Those are the three. I generally, and maybe because I've been in the fight for a while, I don't really look at why it's happened. I try and focus and get people to focus on, now that it's here, let's see what you can do. Because if you can get stuck in how in the world this happened. I was watching, most of us watch basketball and know that NBA's going on. Jason Tatum from the Celtics got hurt, and he came to his dad today and he said to him, why did this happen to me? I mean, he's making $300 million, but I mean, he asked him, why this happened to me? And it's a natural, when you get a bad injury and you get a diagnosis, you ask, why? But I try and tell persons to try and come out of the why as soon as possible. Even with Dale, and I think I was depressed, I was probably depressed for about 9 to 12 months, and then you say, okay, what can you do? So it's genetic, neurological, environmental. Some persons have been concentrating on the MMR shots, because those are the shots that you get when your child is born. Almost everybody has to get those shots, and the application of the shots all at the same time, people believe it caused a reaction. I don't know. My sister is a senior physician, and we've had this debate. I told her I believe it's MMR. She told me, Dwayne, it's not that shot. So it doesn't matter at this point. If it comes on, you just have to try and get the best information as possible in forums like this and others. So, as a community, how can we support inclusion, education, special ed, acceptance, work inclusion? We're working on, as an organization, we're trying to get, we're about to embark on a program where we're going to different businesses to see whether they're interested in following the law and looking at taking on some of our young adults in a business format. We think that we have some businesses who are interested, so that's something that we're looking at right away. And just embracing in churches and in schools, when you go out, you just don't stare, you just understand. I think that is really, really very important. I do believe, as I said earlier, that the Bahamas as a whole has done fairly well in that area. What is REACH? And this is the third part of my presentation.